So without further ado, we can get a warm welcome and round of applause for Brad Belmarez from Aikane Nursery.
All right, aloha everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Brad. I'm an owner and operator of Aikane Nursery here in town. If you're not familiar, it's just right down the street over here. Been growing fruit trees and a lover of fruit trees for a very long time, but doing it professionally for 12 years now. And today, what we're going to talk about is citrus. That's the topic of choice. A few years back in 2019, I did a citrus workshop with hip guys out at their property. And that was really inspiring to a lot of people. So I'm happy to be here today to share what knowledge I know. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go over the presentation in a brief kind of format for you guys. And then after I'm done, you can ask questions. There's also some questions been submitted ahead of time that I'll answer. And yeah, I just hope you guys enjoy your time this morning, and hope you learn something and take something away from this. And like Dash said, the key importance of all this is becoming a better farmer and growing food in this community, because that's something that's really needed right now. And a lot of people don't have land but want to grow food, and so if you have land, you should be taking advantage of that, taking advantage of the rain that we have, taking advantage of the soil conditions that we have, and just being able to learn more about growing and caring for trees. They're huge assets on our properties, and it's something that you should look at as just as well as you take care of your house. You should be taking care of your trees, because these trees, they take years to grow, and the bigger they get, they actually increase in value. A lot of people don't think about this. So whenever I go on people's properties and I see trees that are starting to degrade in health, I always say, hey, let's take care of this tree and not just chop it down and replace it with something else, because these are huge assets to us, okay? All right, so I'm just gonna go through basic things here. So starting off, citrus are grown anywhere on Hawaii Island except for elevations above 6,000 feet. So if you live on a coastal area, you're going to want to grow the more tropical varieties. Kumquats, calamansi, grapefruit, tangerines, these are all citrus that can be grown at lower elevations. If you're really high up, anything over 2,000 feet, which isn't many people in Kohala, only mainly Mountain Road, you're going to be able to grow things like lemons and limes with good success. But oranges aren't going to do so well, and then the lower elevation fruits that I just mentioned aren't going to do so well. So definitely you're going to want to pick a cultivar that's going to do well in the location that you're at, okay? So so starting off, you're going to want to decide, what it is you're looking for. I'm at 2,000 feet, I want to grow oranges. Well, that's not going to be a great idea. Or I get a lot of people that are down by the coast, and, you can pretty much grow anything down by the coast. But again, you want to be selective if you're really close to the ocean. Limes do really well down there. Tangerines, calamansi, those kinds of things do really well in the sweltering heat. And grapefruit actually does really well. I don't know if you guys have had the grapefruits from the guy in Kohala Ranch, but they're some of the best grapefruits. I'm born in Texas, and we had a ruby grapefruit farm pretty close to the town I lived in, and I'm just a huge fan of grapefruits. And he grows some of the best grapefruit I've ever had. So Kohala Ranch, you can grow wonderful grapefruit. Even though it's windy as heck over there, you can still make it happen. He's got a wonderful farm. All right, so select your cultivar. Consider your location, obviously. Elevation is a huge part of what you want to consider. So the first thing I do whenever I show up on a property, a homeowner calls me and I show up, and first thing I do is I pull out my altimeter, and they're like, what are you doing? So I look at my altimeter and I'm like, okay, you're at 1,800 feet, You're a little bit above the ditch or below the ditch is kind of how I consider it for Kohala. If you're below the ditch, you can grow pretty much anything. If you're above the ditch, you're going to want to be selective at the different types of fruit trees you're going to grow, and citrus as well, okay? Next thing I'm gonna do is I generally find my bearings in location to the house or the existing windbreaks that are there, okay? So I usually like look for the sun or I pull out my compass, okay? And the first thing I'm gonna consider is the northeast trade winds. You know, the trade winds are like our nemesis out here. So depending on which way the trade winds are coming in, I'm gonna suggest people install a windbreak or a multi-tiered windbreak. You can do that with fruiting varieties. So you can use, if you wanted to grow like jackfruit on your outer layer and put some avocados on the inner layer before that, and then grow your citrus inside of that. That's all possibilities. You can do edible bamboo on the outside layer. You know, if you want to go with something bigger and your neighbors don't mind, you can use Norfolk pines, podocarpus, dwarf howe. These are all great trees that grow really well. If you want to use native plants, Milo is really nice. You can use kukui, which is the state tree. It's a wonderful tree for windbreak. Takes a little time to grow, but they're all wonderful selections. The reason for this is that when your tree goes to set fruit and the flowers first emerge, if we get a really heavy windstorm, those flowers are going to get blown off. And also, if there's any branches that can actually hit each other, that jolting or rubbing of the branches and the leaves are actually going to knock off the flowers, and you're going to get way less fruit production than you actually, could possibly get. A good example of that is this year. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the weather's been really weird. It was a really interesting winter, drier, not as rainy, and the winds were really light, okay? So if you haven't noticed, we got a ton of avocados set this year, and the mangoes did pretty well as well. And that's because when they went to go flower, there wasn't a lot of wind, So years that we get really hard trade winds when the flowers are being set, that's when you're gonna get less fruit production, okay? So you have to plan for those kind of situations by installing a windbreak. And that way you can prevent like crop damage whenever they do set fruit in case of a really windy year, okay? All right. Next thing to consider is your soil conditions. So pretty much in Hawaii, we're dealing with slightly acidic soil, has some clay in it. It doesn't drain very well. And so, all these things you have to mitigate whenever you go to plant your plants. So, a lot of people, you basically want to use the things that are available to us here on island. We don't want to import a bunch of stuff. So the things we're going to do for drainage, there's cinder available for drainage. I would suggest getting different sizes of cinder, but you can get larger, like rock varieties, and you want to get all the way down to like small, so a mix of large to small. You can also use basalt rock, believe it or not. Jamie from Planted Hawaii, a good friend of mine, they've been growing fruit trees for many years, and she explained it to me like this. Basically, cinder is going to break down over time, okay? So if you put cinder in the ground as your drainage element, it's going to work, but it's only going to work for about 15 years, 20 years before like just the movement of the ground is going to degrade and break down that cinder, and it's going to start to compact, okay? If you use angular gravel, the angular gravel is actually going to hold those pockets of air longer and allow for better drainage. So that was something I didn't know that she explained to me, very interesting. And so what we've been doing is kind of doing a mix of the cinder and basalt rock for drainage. And most properties, I would say here in Kohala, need it unless you're like really coastal in the drier elements. Then you want to focus more on retaining moisture, okay? So as far as retaining moisture goes, the things we can do are adding organic matter, obviously. A really good solution that a guy here in this town has been working on is biochar. I don't know if you guys know Brooks. Everyone know Brooks. So Brooks is he's a fanatic about worms and charcoal, and he's been taking charcoal that was created down in Kauai at the MacNut factory, and he inoculates that with fish amino acid, and then runs it through his worms. And he does a few other things to it as well. But this inoculated biochar actually houses microbes for just, for eternity. It's like a microbe hotel, essentially, okay? And so it's gonna feed the plant. It's gonna act as water retention in a really dry time, and it's just gonna be a really great way to get your plant really boosted up and get the soil boosted up and during the initial planting. Okay, I guess we can go over planting while we're already talking about most of this stuff here. So when you're planting, okay, you're gonna get a fruit tree from a nursery. Doesn't matter where you get it, but you can always come to Aikane. And what we do is we sell them in these bags that are 3-gallon bags. Okay, they're about this tall and they're about 10 inches round. Okay, the roots generally we try and grow them when they're a little younger, so the roots haven't actually started to spiral too much in the bag. Okay, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna look at that bag and you're gonna go, okay, where's my deepest root in there? That's probably where you need to dig down to. Some people say, dig a hole that's 2 or 3 times deeper. You can do that, but let me tell you why you don't have to do that, okay? The reason is when you're growing fruit trees, generally, the roots mimic the canopy of the tree, okay? So if you're trying to get a root to go down, that means the tree is also gonna go up, okay? They mimic each other, right? So what you can do when you're growing a fruit tree is if you give it something hard to go against at the bottom, not only will it not settle when you plant it, but the roots will want to go out. And when the roots go out, that means your canopy is going to go that way as well, okay? So you're breaking that dominance of it wanting to go up, and you're making it go out. And anytime you have lateral branching like that, that's when you're going to get more fruit set, okay? Branches that go up are generally suckers. And those are going to be cut. We'll talk about that whenever I talk about pruning. All right? So you're going to want to dig a hole that's definitely wider than what you would normally think. So I would go 4 feet for a citrus tree. You can go even wider if you have the means. And yeah, sure, you can bring it. Yeah, so if you have the means to dig a wider hole, yeah, thank you very much. All right, so yeah, this is a good example. So you don't have to dig much deeper than this, but you can. And then, again, if you're in a place where you need more drainage, go ahead and dig deeper and then build up with some of those elements that we talked about, basalt rock, cinder. You can add compost in there. All right, and the next thing I would do is I would amend the soil. Because we're slightly acidic, I'm gonna throw a bunch of calcium in there. So it doesn't matter which variety you get. Limestone is fine. There's a product called Dolopril. Dolopril is a great slow release. You can use agricultural lime. That's kind of a quick release. All these things are going to be good elements to help kind of neutralize your soil and give the plant what it needs for a long term. Another good element is phosphorus. So you're going to have to add phosphorus. There's a triphosphate. I forget the name of it. I think it's called superphosphate or something like that. You can get it from Farm and Garden in Kona. They sell a lot of good agricultural implements there. But definitely add that in as well. Add organic matter. And then if you have the means as well, go ahead and add some of the biochar that we talked about, the inoculated biochar. That's just going to increase the microbial life. It's going to help the plant out in a drought or in case you forget to water it. And it's just going to give it that boost that you need to start off with. Okay, so putting your tree in the ground. So most of these plants are potted correctly in the pot, so you can use the top of the plant right here as knowing that the top root is right there, okay? You don't want your tree to be, the top root to be any lower than the existing grade, okay? If you plant that top root a little too deep, not only are you going to suffocate it because the plant needs air as well, but you might rot the trunk of the tree as well, okay? So also having a stable foundation so the plant doesn't actually settle when the soil settles, that's going to also help from the plant getting dirt or anything around the trunk of it and possible rot down the road, okay? So we're going to put that firmly in the ground. We're going to backfill our soil level with the top root. You want to cover it up a little bit. Mulching is a big thing in Kohala. So here's the deal. Definitely mulch in the dry times. But if you have really thick mulch and it's raining like heck, you may want to peel that away a little bit, okay? Because you might suffocate the plant. Mulch, depending on what you're using, especially, if you're using hardwood chips, there's usually a lot of air working through that. But if you're using something that's really fine, it might be stifling and not allowing air to penetrate. Because the roots of the plant want oxygen. They're not just breathing CO2. That's the top of the plant. Okay, so they're trying to absorb oxygen as well. So oxygen needs to get to the roots. Don't stifle the plant. Okay. So going down the list of NPK, nitrogen, you don't need to focus as much on the first year of nitrogen. So you need to put a little bit into the soil, but that's not kind of our focus right now. Potassium is going to be later in the fruiting. So mainly it's just phosphorus. So just focus on the P for now when we're planting, and a little bit of nitrogen just to give it a boost. If you go with too much nitrogen, you could shock the roots and the plant will be harmed by that, okay? So we want to be real careful not to over nitrogen the plant when we start off, all right? So using something like aged cow manure is really good. Don't put hot chicken manure on your fresh tree. Don't mix a ton of that in there. Don't mix any kind of quick release fertilizer like urea or something like that right off the bat. That could damage your plant, okay? So just be real careful with it. Don't go too crazy with amendments right off the bat. But also, remember that this tree right here is going to get hopefully 10 feet tall and 10 to 12 feet wide, okay? So the root zone is going to extend out just as far, okay? So we need to worry about the existing ground around it as well. So if you have the means and you have the time, go ahead and dig out the ground a little bit around it and add in those same things as well. You know what I'm saying? Because as the tree grows, it's going to need more of those things. And if you're just sprinkling it on the top, it's not penetrating to the root zone. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. And then, so we got the tree in the ground. We've backfilled our soil. We haven't put the tree too deep in the soil. It's not too proud where the top roots are showing. We put a layer of mulch on. One other thing I forgot to mention is azomite. Azomite's kind of a trace mineral supplement. It's made from volcanic rock, I believe in New Mexico or Arizona. It's mined over there. You can get it at Farm and Garden. That's a really good multi-mineral supplement. I don't know if you guys know Jana Bogues. I worked with her for a number of years. She actually will dial in your soil to the T if you want her to. She can take soil samples and give you further recommendations. But if you don't have the time and money for that, I would just add azomite in the soil mix as well, because that's going to give you kind of all those trace minerals that the plant's going to want to uptake, and then you're going to be eating that, as a result. And so you're basically getting vitamins, from your plant. So the more that we can get into the ground, the more the plant can absorb, the more you're going to be eating that. And it'll express in the genes of the plant as well. So it's just a really great way to go. Okay. Let me jump back to, let's go over watering. Okay. So, what I like to do is I dig my hole, and then I fill it up with water, especially in Kohala. It's dry as heck out here. When you start to dig down, you're going to notice that the soil may be a little crumbly. That means you're hitting subsoil. If you're still hitting the darker brown stuff, that's really good. But I like to fill my hole with water. So I'll just take a water hose and I'll just bring it over to the hole. And I'll just let it fill up. And then I take the water hose off and I let that drain out, okay? And then once it's drained out, then I'll put my tree in there. When I lay the tree in the ground, what I like to do is I'll very gently cut the bag. That's why I like these bags, by the way. If they're in a really hard pot, you can cut that as well, but be really careful. I stabbed myself one time doing that. So cut the bag here, okay? And then you can actually let some of this soil fall off the roots. It's okay. Citrus is resilient. It's not like, I can't think off the top of my head, but there's some trees that literally you touch the roots and they all the leaves fall off, So citrus isn't like that. They can handle a little bit of handling of the roots, okay? So what I'll do is I'll actually make a little bit of a mound, okay, in the ground, and I'll set the tree onto the mound, and I'll actually spread the roots out, So if they're a little bit coiled in the bag, go ahead and just uncoil them a little bit and spread them out and down like in this dome shape, okay? And that's going to allow these roots to actually get a head start in the direction that they need to go, okay? If you leave them all spiraled up, they actually have to unwind themselves, and it's going to take a lot away from the growth of the tree. And it also could lead to like girdling or something like that down the road. These roots could actually bind on themselves, and it could be detrimental to the tree down the road, okay? So just take the roots and unwind them a little bit, spread them out, and then put your soil back on top, and then again, water the soil that you backfilled with to make sure that's moist as well, okay? You don't want to put a tree in a dry hole, okay? That's really going to damage the tree. It's going to sap the moisture out of it right away, and you're going to be like, what the heck happened to my tree? It's going to look shocked in a few days. It won't happen right away, but in a few days, you'll be like, oh no, what did I do? Okay? But again, treat the tree with care. Just be real gentle with it. Another practice that I've heard when I was doing natural farming training is they actually would crop the taproot, okay? So the taproot is the one that goes straight down, and then you've got lateral roots coming off of that, okay? We would actually go in and truncate the taproot and then put it onto that berm and then spread it out. And again, that goes back to the thing I was just talking about where you can break the dominance of the tree wanting to go straight up by cutting that taproot. So it's gonna stop that, wanting to go straight up because it can't go straight down now. The roots are gonna be, the energy is gonna be spreading out, right? So these are all things that you want to practice with trees that you're going to be cultivating into shapes where you're going to be harvesting from, okay? Don't do that to trees that you want to grow up, So your windbreak plants, don't cut the taproot, okay? You want the windbreak trees to go up. Doesn't matter if they're super skinny when they're small and going up. Let them go up, and then they'll fill out over time, okay? All right. Let me refer to this real quick. Okay, rootstock selection. So when you're going to select a rootstock, so actually let me explain this a little to begin with. Most of the trees that we sell are grafted trees, okay? You can start trees from seed. There are certain varieties of like limes that grow from seed. We do air layers of like Mexican lime and key lime. But most trees you're going to get grafted varieties. The reason for that is they pick an adult tree that has a desirable fruit, and we graft that onto a rootstock that's going to be resilient to the different diseases that we have in Hawaii, okay? If you tried to grow a tangerine from seed out here, an orange from seed out here, it might produce, but it's going to a nice viable fruit, but it's going to be 1 in 1,000 that's going to be desirable. And it's possible that some of these root diseases are going to really affect it down the road, okay? The reason we select a rootstock to graft onto is because those rootstocks are resilient to these diseases, okay? So the two that we use in Hawaii most commonly are the C35, and that's your dwarf. Everyone, you've heard dwarf or semi-dwarf rootstock, okay? And the reason this rootstock actually, it restricts the growth of the plant. It actually doesn't allow the scion or the graft that you put onto the tree grow very big. And that's actually, it's like basically stifling its growth. And that's what makes it a dwarf tree, okay? So it's not that the scion that you put on there, the tree itself in its original form could be a gigantic tree, okay? What we're doing is we're taking a rootstock that actually is going to restrict that growth, all right? And then the standard or the full-size trees that we use is called Carrizo. Carrizo, originally, it was a hybrid that was planted in Texas, in Carrizo, Texas, and they found that it was resistant to all kinds of diseases and that it was a really nice producer, produced a really good quality fruit. And, they started using it for Hawaii, California, Florida, all over the nation, okay? So what you want to do is go ahead.
Is that specifically for oranges or?
No, actually this is all citrus, yeah. Yeah, Carrizo, that's your... So it's a hybrid of, I believe, a tangerine and let's see. Actually, I think I have it written down. It is, yeah, it's a trifoliate, which is the like seedy little fruit hybridized with a tangerine. Okay, and through pollinating and then growing these plants out, and then seeing the characteristics of when you graft onto it, what happens to the tree over hundreds of years. That's how they figured out these different rootstocks. Okay, yeah.
If we could save all questions for the actual question and answer period.
Yeah, yeah.
I can get them
Yeah, we'll do question answer.
on the screen and hear them.
Yeah, and I'll be around afterwards as well. So if you have any questions, we've got a bunch of fruit trees for sale over here, and we can take questions as well. Okay, so yeah, so the things you're going to want to consider on your property are how much space do you have to grow these trees. If you're going to do an orchard kind of scenario, I would go with a standard rootstock, and I would just prune it the way you want to prune it, okay? The standard's going to be more vigorous. It's going to allow the tree to get bigger. You're going to get more fruit production, and if you want to get up in the tree on a ladder, you're going to have way more fruit available whenever the time comes. If you have restricted space, or you're not going to have like a vigorous pruning plan, I would go with more of a dwarf or semi-dwarf tree. Semi-dwarfs are going to be up to 15 feet, maybe 20 at the most. Dwarfs, they say they stay around 12 feet. It's going to restrict the growth to about 12 feet. Again, I would have a plan to prune from the get-go, okay? So know that you're always going to have to shape this tree no matter what, okay? So that's why I'm saying if you get a standard rootstock tree, it could end up being the same size and shape as your dwarf rootstock if you just prune it properly. And you're going to get more vigorous growth out of it, okay? But that doesn't mean don't get a dwarf. Dwarfs are really, they're great because they grow a little bit slower, and they actually do not grow over 12 to 15 feet, okay? So restricted space, open space, these are kind of like the considerations you want to have. The dwarf doesn't produce as much as the other tree. They both produce the same quality fruits, the same thickness of skin. All these kind of characteristics are about the same on these plants, okay? But just consider your space and consider your ability to get out and prune this thing, every 6 months or so, okay? So once that's chosen, I guess, you all can decide whatever variety of fruit tree you want to get. There's a ton of cool fruit trees available out there. Some of my favorites are the red orange. I like the key lime because I love margaritas. It has more of a more limey flavor. A lot of people like the Tahitian lime. It's a way bigger lime, but it's kind of fruity flavored. It's a little bit different. I'm a culinary person, so when I cook, I don't want that fruitiness in something that I want to taste limey. So I'll use a key lime instead. The lemons have different flavors, so you need to experiment with what type of lemon you might like. There's Navel and Valencia oranges. You can check out the characteristics of those and see, one's better for peeling, one's better for juicing. Some are better to just take off the tree and take the skin off and eat it, that kind of thing. My favorite citrus of all time is probably a Tangelo. I don't know if you guys have had a great Tangelo, but this island grows incredible Tangelos. Just be careful not to choke on how much juice comes out of these things, because I was really thirsty one day and bit into one and almost choked on it, exploded in my mouth. So, all right. Let's go over. I'll talk to you briefly about grafting. So I drew a couple pictures over here. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but you can come and look afterwards. It's not something that you really need to know a ton about. But if you do have grafting questions down the road, you're happy to. You're welcome to call me anytime, and we can go over it with you in the nursery or whatever else. We don't do a ton of grafting ourselves, but it's something I'm really interested in, and it's something I've done before, and it's good fun. If you have a tree that just produces a phenomenal fruit, it might be something worth grafting. So if you have the time and energy to go about doing some grafting, please take part in it. Read up on it. Give it a shot. It's really cool. So what you do is you take your scion, which is off of, let's say you have a really stellar tangelo, okay? You're gonna, whenever that new season little shoot comes out and you see the tree is starting to push, right? So it's pushing energy out into those outer branches, and that's what you're looking for, okay? You're looking for that energy to be pushing out into those little branches. And so when that shoot gets a little bit bigger, maybe 2, 3, 4 inches, you can cut that off. And there's different ways to cut it. Usually they do a little angular cut on it, okay? And then what Plant It Hawaii does, that's the place where most people get their citrus on the island, is they do an upside down T graft, okay? So they cut a T upside down into it, and they peel those little flaps open, and they put insert the graft into that. Then they use a paraffin wax tape to cover that whole graft, okay? And then what happens is the tissues actually, the little scion, requests of the mother plant nutrition, right? And so the plant starts to provide that for it, but you have to line up the 2 layers, the cambium layers, okay? So if you line up those 2 layers just right, then they start talking to each other, and the mama plant gives the baby plant nutrition, and boom, you have a grafted fruit tree, okay? So what actually happens is, let's say, I'll use this picture over here as an example. So actually, I can just use this. So what we're going to do is, in this bag, I would have seeded one of the root stocks, okay? So I would have taken a seed from the root stock that was grown out, and I would grow a plant, and I'd probably get it up to about this tall. Now, it wouldn't be this plant, okay, because we're going to graft onto it. It's going to have a trifoliate leaf pattern, okay? And what trifoliate means is exactly what it sounds like. It has 3 leaves, okay? It looks like this. If you ever see that on your fruit trees, that is actually from the root stock, okay? And you're going to want to cut that off because that's not going to be a fruit-bearing limb, okay? So your entire tree is going to look like that with the trifoliate on top, okay? You're going to actually come back down all the way down here, and you're going to make your upside down T, and then you're going to insert that scion into there, and you're going to wax tape it, okay? And then what grows from that is going to be this plant right here, which was the mother plant, okay? And you're actually going to take that old tree, and if anything else shoots out from that rootstock, you're going to keep cutting that off until this becomes the dominant branch, okay? And then once that becomes the dominant branch, then this rootstock will stop producing suckers, okay? A lot of the old fruit trees that haven't been pruned in Hawaii, they're going to have a lot of root suckers coming off of them. And, I sometimes come to properties and, these people maybe put in a tree 3 years ago, and they'll be like, wow, why is this one so big and this one's so small? And then I'll go inspect it, and unfortunately, the big, beautiful branch is all the trifoliate. And so what happened is they didn't notice it. They thought it was just growing really vigorously, but it was actually from the rootstock that was growing really vigorously. And so I have to tell them sadly, like, that huge branch that has all this leaves on it, I'm gonna have to cut that off because your actual graft is this little guy down here, So it's real important when you plant these trees to pay close attention to any kind of suckers that are coming off of the tree, especially in its youth, okay? So any kind of trifoliate, just keep nipping those off. Another good practice for the first year or 2 of these trees, the grafted fruit trees, is to take the buds off whenever it goes to bud, okay? So I know how exciting it is. You're like, oh, I got this new tree. It's got lemons all over it, but all that does is really tax the plant in the first few years, okay? So go ahead and take those off. Send the energy back down to the roots, give that plant a fighting chance to grow faster, bigger, healthier roots. And then on year 3 or year 4, then you can start letting it really flower out hard and fruit hard, and you'll get a much better fruit, okay? Yeah, and so there's, just to go quickly, there's a whip graft, which basically is just they take the branch and they cut it at an angle, and they cut the scion at the same angle, and you want to get the same width of your rootstock as the scion, and then they meld those together as well, and you line up the cambium layer and tape that off, and that can work as well. And then there's the bud graft, which is really popular with like stone fruits on the mainland. So all they do is they take a little razor blade and they just nip off a little fresh bud off of the mother fruit tree, and they insert that bud into a little bitty slit on the plant, and that little bud grows into the branch, okay? And so that's another popular way. They don't do that very much with citrus because she basically said it's just a lot easier to see, a scion that's 2-3 inches, big going into that upside down T than it is to have a little bitty bud to have to manage in case the rootstock pops out or whatever else, So it's basically like a practicality choice. You could do it any way, but this is their way that they've done it to get these fruit trees in a commercial production kind of scenario, okay? All right, we've gone over planting, fertilizing. So fertilizing, like I said earlier, the nitrogen you don't have to worry about too much in year 1. And year 2, you want to start adding nitrogen. And year 3, you probably want to start adding potassium, okay? Any kind of like bloom fertilizer or citrus and palm trees actually and citrus kind of have the same fertilizer needs, so you can use palm fertilizer as well. If you want to go organic, Bioflora makes a product. Let me see if I've got the numbers on here. Bioflora with the NPK being 6-10-1. That's good for citrus. Again, I didn't tell you guys this, but I do have copies of this if you guys want of the presentation, and I'll get this online somehow, so you guys can get copies of this online as well. There's a lot of good information. I cited all my references on here, like of where I got information from, so you can go research those websites even more. Hawaii, CTAR, and the ag resources online are amazing nowadays, and we have some of the best plant growers in the world on this island. So you can, there's just a wealth of information on this island. But yeah, I kind of compiled what I know into this document, and I'll provide that for you guys, a link to this, okay? The organic alternative was Bioflora. And again, if you're not familiar with like natural farming, I believe that's a low cost. It takes a little bit more labor, time, and understanding. But if you have the time, I would look into natural farming as well, Korean natural farming to be specific, creating your own microbes, proliferating those microbes, and then spraying those onto the tree, incorporating that into the soil with inoculated manure, using biochar that's been inoculated with fermented plant juice or fermented fish amino acids. All those things are really beneficial. There's also a wealth of information on pest control, natural pest control, using chili oils, using like fly traps. There's just a ton of information, with low impact and not having to bring a ton of like chemicals or anything else on your property. Because I think a lot of us are like-minded and we don't want to be around a ton of chemicals. We're trying to grow food that's healthy for us, that's mineral dense, and those kinds of things. So I encourage you to look into Korean natural farming as an alternative to just your standard chemical fertilizing regimens. Okay. I don't know how we're doing on time, but I just want to go over, we're doing good? Okay, I want to go over pruning real quick. So I just drew a couple of little crude drawings here, but this is the first stage of your tree here. So like that tree right there, let's say we put that in the ground, and that's this one over here, okay? What I try and go for on year 1 is getting 4 main trunks or 4 lateral branches, okay? So what you're gonna do, and it sounds really crude, is you're gonna come back to this tree, and you see how this top is like splitting off in 4 different ways? So that's not what we want, okay? So what we wanna do is basically like take that off in year 1, okay? So I'm gonna truncate it, I'm gonna cut the top off, and then I'm gonna allow branching to come out along the the stem here, okay? And what I'm looking for is 3 to 4 branches that I can create off of this stem, okay? And year 1, don't worry if you don't get all 4, okay? You can always work in the third or fourth one down the road, okay? So year 1, I cut off the top, okay? And I encourage, and if it has a straight point on the tree, you can just nip the top bud like that, and that will break the dominance of the plant as well, and that'll encourage that lateral branching as well, okay? So if it's a tree that's already just one stem and not multi-trunked like that, like split on the top, you can just nip a bud on the top of it, and that'll break the dominance, okay? It'll be like an animal came by and just bit the tender shoots off the top, okay? And the plant will react to that, okay? It'll automatically start branching lower. Okay, so we're going to let 1, 2, maybe 3 branches come off, okay? And you're going to encourage those branches for that year, okay? Let them grow, let them do whatever the heck they're going to do, okay? The next year, what you want to do is if you want to get a 4th branch, you might want to tip all of those. So you might want to come and cut, and then get this last little branch to pop out. Okay, you might get 5 or 6 little branches to pop out, and if that happens, cut back 4 of them, okay, and just encourage the one that you want to grow. Now, a good shape is alternating. So you have 1 branch here, 1 branch here, 1 branch here, and 1 branch here, okay? You don't want your branches to look like this. You don't want it to be trunk and then split like this, coming up in a V with 1, 2, 3 coming off, okay? That's kind of a bad shape for citrus. And also with citrus, you don't want branches that are going straight up, and you don't want branches that are in a light V. What you're looking for is branching that's going to be almost at 90 degree, okay? 90 degree is going to be your strongest branch with citrus, all right? So if you have a V like this, what's going to happen over time is it's possible that these are going to actually grow into each other and crack apart, okay, because of the weight and the poor branching at this point right here. So they actually might push each other apart enough to where it actually stresses and cracks the tree or cracks the branch off, okay? So what I would do if I was going to correct this right here is in year 1, if I saw this happening, I would literally just take off 2 of these branches, okay? And I would just encourage this one for the time being, all right? And then what's going to happen is one's going to shoot out over this way, okay? And then you may even get one down here, and you may get one down here, okay? And that would be a correct shape, okay? That's what you're looking for, okay? If you already have a citrus tree that's in bad shape, don't worry. If it's still like, not 20, 25 years old, you can renovate that tree, okay? You can correct its shape by pruning it back selectively. You don't want to cut it to the ground to start with and then, select the branches off of it. But you want to slowly cut it back and start to correct its shape, and you can definitely get it back to a healthy shape, okay? So year 1, we're trying to create our laterals, okay? So year 2, we hopefully got 3 or 4 lateral branches that are in good shape. They're not really V's going up like this, but they're more out, okay, 90 degree. That's going to be your fruiting branch. The reason it fruits when it goes this way is because when it starts to set flower and it's collecting all those starches and sugars out on the ends of the branch, it gets heavier, and that stress actually makes it flower harder. Okay, so the stress and the weight of all that, and then as it produces the fruit, that shape of that branch actually allows it to be stronger. Okay. And then year 3, you should end up with something similar to this picture here, okay? So you had 1, 2, 3, 4 of your main or lateral branches, and now you have all these little sublaterals. So on each branch, let's say you had 4 branches, now you're going to want 4 sublaterals, okay? So you're going to encourage 4 different little laterals to come off of those main laterals, okay? So 4 and then 4, really easy to remember, not too hard. Okay, the actual pruning itself, you want to take your time And I kind of like go and I sit underneath a tree for a little bit, and just kind of meditate on it. I look up at it and I'm like, all right, I kind of see its structure, see what's going on. I'll back away, get a different perspective, maybe stand away 20, 30 feet and kind of look at it, the overall shape of it. And then go back and start doing your pruning, okay? Especially if you're trying to correct the shape of a plant. And also what we want to encourage is we want to encourage what they call an open crown. Okay, so we want to, if there's any branching that are going straight up, we're going to cut those out, as I've already said. And if there's any branches that are angling back towards the middle of the tree, so off of your lateral branch, if you get a branch that's actually like starting to shoot back towards the middle here, you want to cut those out as well. Okay, so anything that's going straight up, anything that's pointing towards the center, and also anything that's crossing. So if you have branches that are crossing, all that's going to happen is when the wind blows, they're just going to rub on each other, and they're never going to set fruit. It's just going to keep damaging itself. Okay, so you want to cut out crossing branches, dominant that go straight up, and anything that's going back towards the middle of the tree. All right, and let's see. Oh, another cool. So at my house, I've got a lime tree next to my house. So I just wanted to mention this, that if you plant something really close to your house, because some people make this mistake, and I did when I first was starting planting. I planted a lime tree right next to my house, but man, it produces awesome limes, and it's just a bomber. So what I did was I trained it into what they call a step over, okay? And basically what that is the whole tree is now leaning this way, away from the house, okay? So I've discouraged all the branches that used to go and hit my gutter and rub on the house at night when the wind blows. And I've got the whole thing like leaning over this way now. And so I'm just encouraging all those fruiting branches to go out this way. It's really cool. So that's a technique you can use. And also this is like, some people use that just in orchard scenarios as well. If like, let's say you plant along a fence line, and you don't really care about your neighbor getting fruit as well. You could prune all the trees to lean over in your property, right? And that encourages all that energy and all that focus to be coming to this side of the tree as well. It's not providing for both sides of the tree. And the roots will correct themselves too. The roots will actually underground be doing the same thing. So that's a possibility as well. So don't think that, oh man, I screwed up. I planted this tree 10 feet from the house and, now I'm going to have to cut it down. You can encourage it to be, away from the house. And if you do that for enough years, then it stops growing towards the house. It's like, oh man, every time I shoot towards the house, I get cut off, So plants are adaptable. Plants are smart. All right. So we're running close on time here, but, let's see if I've got anything else for you. So just real quick, disease and pests. There's just a ton of disease and pests in Hawaii. We're like in the retirement home for pests around the world. Okay, so it's just something you're gonna have to deal with. People come to me all the time and they're like, "Oh, I've got this and I've got that," and it's just like, I know you do, because everybody does. And there's ways to deal with that. To diminish it, but the biggest and best way to do it is by increasing the health of your tree through taking care when you're planting it, fertilizing it properly, and planting diversity around the trees. Okay, so the bugs have something else to pick on while this tree is getting established. Okay, so diversity, taking care of the health of the plant, and planting properly, and not letting your tree get stressed out by not watering it as well. Okay. And that will really help the pest situation. Years 1 through 5, I've found that any new landscape that we create is going to be absolute hell. The bugs are going to hit it. The rose beetles are going to chew it. The whitefly is going to be there. The ants are going to be there. Everything's going to be there checking out this new environment, okay? So you just have to, an easy way is just pull out a high pressure water hose and just go out there and blast the tree, like 2 times a week. And I promise you it'll change, because bugs don't like to be knocked off their branches every day. They're going to go find somewhere else to live. So that's a quick and easy way. There's a ton of other methods to pest control. I encourage you, if you have questions afterwards, I can answer them. And but that's my quick and easy, is just pull out the high pressure water hose and just hose them down. And the bugs won't stay, promise you. Okay? So keep your plant happy, and you'll have less bugs over time, because when a plant is stressed out, it puts out a hormone that attracts the bugs, and then the bugs come and they eat your plant because it's stressed out, So take good care of your plant, keep it in a healthy environment, plant diversity around it, and you'll be way better off. Okay, so I just want to wrap it up by saying thank you so much, Hip Ag, for having me out today, and I really appreciate everything that you guys are doing in the community. And we're Aikane Nursery. We're just right here in town, so please stop by the nursery sometime and check out our plant stock. I've got business cards up here. I've got a few copies of the presentation that you guys can grab, and we're selling fruit trees. I've got a bunch of different varieties of citrus in the truck over here, so afterwards, if you're interested, I believe that there's a subsidized cost for the fruit trees, so you guys definitely come check those out. And just keep supporting agricultural endeavors in our community, because it's much needed. And everybody needs to grow food and learn how to deal with plants and trees. And that's just part of human nature. Okay, so I really appreciate you guys' time today. Thanks for coming out and supporting us. And we'll do Q&A afterwards. So thank you so much. You guys have anything? Yeah. Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about what we do. So I'm head of the landscaping department at Aikane. We do big to small, landscape detailed work. I do consultations. You can have me out to your property. I can give you my, any bit of information that I have on where to plant, how to plant, anything about your property that you want to know about, different types of plants that are on the property. I can give you information about. We do all kinds of different work. I'm a skilled woodworker. My brother, he's actually a certified arborist. He prunes trees and cuts trees on a daily basis. We've been in the community. I've been here on the island for 18 years, and I've been in the community here in town for 16 years, and doing Aikane for 12. And pretty much know everybody in the town, and really, it's a blessing to have everybody's support in this community. It's such a really wonderful community, great people, and just want to say thank you very much for supporting us over the years and supporting Dash Guys over the years, supporting agriculture. So
we got 10 minutes for Q&A.
Okay, all right, 10 minutes for Q&A. All right, go ahead. Yeah, just. Okay, so the question is, what tools are we using to prune? So actually, I brought these just because. So I've got a nice pair of Felco cutters. If you're not familiar with Felco, they're Swiss made, really high quality. You can buy the cheaper varieties, but they just don't last very long. And the anvil on them and the blade don't line up as well. So I use Felco just because they make a really nice clean cut. If you're going to be doing a ton of pruning, like between different trees, definitely like sanitize your clippers between each tree. It helps out, so you're not spreading stuff around. And then I also use these Japanese-made saws. So this one's made by Silky. They're rather expensive, but they're very high quality. They make laser sharp cuts, and they're just really nice saws to have. So if you're doing a bunch of pruning, or you got a bunch of trees to prune, definitely get one of these. You're going to need it. Okay. I wouldn't cut anything over 3 or 4 inches with this, but I still do it anyways, just because I like getting out there with my Silky. But this is a great tool to have in your belt. If you've got really tall branches, Silky even makes a big pole saw, and those are really nice as well. They're pretty pricey, but again, like you get what you pay for when it comes to like metal and different tools. Like if you want a really high quality tool, then go ahead and buy it. And it pays off in the long run. Yeah. Next question.
You talked a little bit about watering the hole.
Right.
But you didn't talk about
watering
the plant.
Okay, so for the first, depending on where you're at, obviously, okay? So if you don't want to be anywhere where the water is going to pool, you don't want to plant citrus in somewhere where water is going to pool, okay? It's going to rot the roots. So you're looking for either a flat or a slightly downgrade area to plant. That way you got good drainage. Citrus loves drainage. If you're in a dry spot or we're in a dry spell or it's very windy, you're probably going to want to water at least 3 times a week. Okay, so thoroughly soak the plant in the entire root zone. So the root zone is going to be, again, mimicked by how far the leaves are spreaded out, right? So if the leaves are going out 6 feet in a diameter, you're going to want to water that area, okay? So go ahead and soak it to the point where, a mature tree is probably going to need anywhere from 5 to 10 gallons at least. Okay, so put 10 or more gallons on this tree, and then let it should drain through. It shouldn't be like sitting on top with water. Okay, and that way that your soil is draining well. So 3 times a week, I would say, while the plant's small. As it ages, it's going to be able to withstand drought more. So you can move to like a 2 time a week schedule or a 1 time a week, one big soaking, and that's going to help. That's going to help also the roots go out further, right? So if you're watering your citrus tree every day in the same little spot, you're just standing by the trunk of the tree, the roots are going to want to stay right where you're putting the water, okay? So encourage the roots to go out, put the water a little bit further away from the trunk of the tree, and every now and then go ahead and just let it dry out a little bit, because that's just going to encourage the tree to root deeper. Okay, it's going to search for water. So you don't want to water it enough to where it's comfortable where it is all the time. You're going to want to let it reach out for water, okay? So 3 times a week, 2 times a week to 1 time a week. As it ages, in a rainy period, you don't need to water at all. Don't worry about them. Citrus are very tolerant if we're in a rainy spell. Okay, go ahead.
We got quite a few questions from the stream.
Okay.
The first one relating to pruning. It sounds like anything that's not the main trunk and the important branches going to the side should be cut, just not the main ones, right? So you only keep 4?
Yeah, so you can again, going back to the drawing, like you've got, let's say you have one main trunk coming up here. Yeah, you can just tip it, and that's going to encourage these laterals to come off. So you can cut the main trunk, but you don't want to severely bring it back down, because then you may damage the tree by cutting it that much. Yeah.
Okay. Can a 40-year-old tangerine tree be reshaped to a healthy shape? It's producing a lot this year. I just want to make sure it doesn't split apart.
Sure. When I first asked the question to citrus experts on Hilo's side about ages of trees, they said over 25, it's going to be rare that it's going to be producing great fruit. But I mean, I see trees that are ancient that produce really good fruit. So I would say if you have a tree that is still producing great fruit, yes, go ahead and start to reshape it. Good rule of thumb is don't cut more than 1/3 of its mass off at a time. So cut 1/3 off. Let's say the tree is like misshapen, leaning one way. Well, the way that it's leaning, go ahead and cut 1/3 off that side and encourage it to start shooting on this side. And then the following, fruiting season or 6 months to a year later, go ahead and start to cut it more until it reaches that shape that is desirable or whatever it is you're looking for. Again, it's malleable. You can cut it in whatever shape you want, but it's generally a personal preference, right? We all have this idea of what we want our tree to be like, but the best for fruiting for citrus trees is the open crown pruning style.
Okay. I have a Meyer lemon that produces well, but when the fruit ripens, the skin turns brown, but the inside is fine. I've read that there's a mite that burrows into the skin that's causing the browning. What can I do to get rid of these mites?
If it is a mite, you'd have to get out a little not a microscope, but you can get the little handheld ones, and you can actually see the mites on the plant itself or on the fruit itself. I'd say it sounds more like a fruit fly issue. So if you see a little puka, and then the fruit is browning, and then all of a sudden it turns really rotty and brown, that's probably a fruit fly thing. It's probably, but it could be a mite as well. Yeah, a miticide would be my first choice, or neem oil. But the thing is with like neem oil and miticide kind of soaps, you have to do them very often. So you got to do that weekly until it goes away. Okay, it's not something you can just apply one time and boom, boom, they're gone. Because you got to interrupt that cycle for enough times for the pest to actually be gone. Okay.
Does this pruning shape apply to other fruit trees other than citrus, like mountain apples?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would say some trees are better than others in certain shapes. Okay, so there's so many different styles of pruning. If you go do a little research on pruning shapes, there's just multiple ways to prune fruit trees. Okay. Some are going to be better than others. This is good for citrus. For a mountain apple, I mean, I always see like your classic, like it almost looks like a big oak tree or something shaped to it, you know. But I would say yes, you can probably bring a mountain apple back down if you want it like shorter and more full. But just don't chop it all the way, you know, all one time. Bring it down in stages. And that way you don't affect the overall health of the tree. Yeah.
You might have said this in the beginning, Brad, but what is the best time of year you recommend to do this?
Okay. Yeah, that's a question I get all the time. It's like, so the question is, what's the best time of year to prune your fruit tree or your citrus? There is, I mean, literally you could have a lime or a lemon or an orange that are producing fruit year round. Okay. And people are always telling me like, oh, well, I'm waiting until it stops fruiting. And I'm like, oh, so you're never going to prune it, huh? You know, so what I would say is in Hawaii, just go ahead and prune your tree. You know, if it's prime, if the fruit is almost ripe, then you may just wait till it ripens, okay? But you're gonna see buds set on the other side of the tree, and it's gonna be producing fruit as well. You know, so just you got to pick and choose. But just go ahead and cut the tree and get it over with whenever you feel necessary or when you have time. You know, we're all busy. You know, if you don't get out there and do it when you have the time or when it feels right. Another thing I kind of like take generally is like when I know the seasons are changing and the winds are about to come, I go cut everything. You know, I'm like, oh, it's that time of year. You know, the winds are about to pick up again. You know, October, November, that kind of thing. I go cut all my trees. You know, and that way I know that when the big winds come, they're not going to get damaged. They're not going to crack big branches off and damage other trees, that kind of thing.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
One other question. For citrus rust,
Yeah.
would you recommend treating that with neem, or is that more of like a soil
That's
amendment?
a fungal thing, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd go with like a copper.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. Fungicide would be something to address that. We got more questions. All right.
How much is an on-site consultation?
Well, it depends. So if you're wanting me to come out just to do straight consult, I'll probably just charge my normal rate, which is around $65 an hour. If you have a bigger project that you want our company to bid for you, then my time is free. I'll come out and spend time with you, and we can look at your property. I've been helping out people for years in town, just on my own time. I enjoy doing it. I like seeing everybody's situation. I'm not greedy with my time, so if you do genuinely have some questions or things that you want me to look at, I'm not opposed to spending some time to look at your property. If money is an issue, but for the most part, if on a professional level, $65 an hour is what I charge, and bigger projects, if you want us to bid it, then my time is free. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Brad. So blessed to have such an expert that's been planting for so many years up here. We got any sweet potato growers in the audience? Nice, awesome. Crucial crop, yeah. Second most important crop for the Hawaiian people, and wow, it really takes some skill to grow sweet potato well. You know, we've grown a lot of sweet potatoes over the years on our farm, and it's a challenge. You know, the nematodes can be really a big challenge, and you know, having the adequate space to rotate properly, and then knowing your varietals. But I'm so incredibly thrilled because we have our local Kohala sweet potato or Uala expert with us today, and she's just about to lead a demo outside. And she's right here in the back in the maroon. So if we could get a big round of applause for Kehaulani Marshall.
Hi everyone, I'm Kehaulani Marshall. I was born Kehaulani Raposo. I was raised Kehaulani Zupnik, and then I got married. So now I'm Kehaulani Marshall. My family comes from Kauai, the Hudi and Maka'aho'a Ohana. And from Oahu, I have the Akiona and Noa Ohana, as well as the Moi, Samoan, and the Mokuiki Ohana. And then from Kohala, I come from the Bell and the Lincoln Ohana. And also from Honoka'a, the Raposo and Kodani Ohana. I'm here to share with you a little bit of what I'm learning about Uala, or sweet potato. I work with the organization called Ulu Mau Puanui. Our work is focused on the Kohala dryland agricultural field system on the leeward slopes of Kohala and near Ponoholo, if that helps you get a little bit of an origin of where I'm at. And everything I share today will be specific to our experience working in that area. The two main crops in ancient times in that area, the food crop was Uala, or sweet potato, and the assisting crop, if you will, was sugar cane or coal. And as you well know, a lot of us are from Kohala here, and you know the leeward side is a little bit windier. I'll say a lot windier sometimes. The sugar cane functioned as a mist catcher, so it would catch the rains coming in on those winds and water the Uala beside it. So what we would have seen between Pu'ukahua and Upolu Point, or Mo'okiheau on the leeward side, we would have seen alternating rows of coal or sugarcane and sweet potato. And again, sweet potato was the food crop. And like Dasha had mentioned earlier, it is the second favorite staple of the Hawaiians and most important. We believe through our research on the island of Hawaii, when we look at the entire island and the fact that there are very few valleys to propagate and successfully, sustainably grow kalo, we know that the ancestors were relying on sweet potato for their staple food because 90% of the island is dry. So these field systems existed in Ka'u, Kona, and Kohala on Hawaii Island. And Kohala was the most, I think Ka'u would probably match the Kohala field system in its age. And the Kona is a little bit newer. And then there's dryland field systems on Maui and Molokai. Okay, so in these dryland field systems, that means rain-fed only. That's me right now, rain-fed only. I've gotten some questions about irrigation, how much to water and things like that. I can answer regarding or towards our experience working there. Okay, so let's begin with planting the Uala. We've got plenty of questions before we started. So how long do you keep the cuttings? Again, plant the cuttings for tubers. If you want to get leaf growth, then plant the tuber. All right. The sweet potato will mature from 4 to 6 months. Unlike the kalo, that will take anywhere to 9 months, or from 9 months to 18 months to mature. You could get almost 3 crops of Uala in the same time that it takes to grow kalo. Okay, so that was one of the reasons the Uala was very important in our history, because it helped establish the state of order, if you will, in Hawaii, because we ended up with a surplus of food. And the Uala was how we did that. Okay, we have a surplus of food, then we have the capacity to engage in more expert work, if you will, focused on the arts or other types of medicinals, and as well as other types of planting. So in planting the Uala, the idea is to get as many of these nodes as possible into the ground. All right, I'll harvest. This plant is lovely right here. Sorry, I'm just going to move a bit and just grab a vine here. Always, as you guys know, make sure your tools are clean. whenever you're in somebody else's yard especially, or sharing plants. And then we just trim off the leaves and any growth that might happen, runners, what we call them. And then you get to the stem, or the cutting, or the slip, whatever you call it. Whenever I'm cleaning Uala, I like to leave at least one leaf on there so I can identify the variety that I planted, and that's enough that I need to know. This is a hardy variety here. We call it Lani Keha. Not sure how native it might be. It's not in our ancient text as one of the 200 names that have been recorded, but it's a great sturdy plant, resilient, grows everywhere. I've seen it grow in Panaeva, where there's like this much soil and the rest is lava. I've seen it in a very wet area, and the tubers still come from this plant. It's amazing. That's how you prep it. Take all the leaves off so that the energy is in the slip now, right? As far as the length goes, we usually measure in the field. I have a row that is mounded up, and I need to plant at least, we call it 1 ha'ilima from your elbow to your fingertip. That's going to be too long for this space. So what I'm going to do is count how many nodes I can get in there, the maximum without making it too long. So at least 4 nodes, all right, is ideal, 4 or more. And that's how you prep that and plant it. Okay, I'm going to leave that there and work with, introduce a new variety here just to add. This is we call it ho'onani nani, make it pretty. It's very, appealing and aesthetic. And so I'm going to add a little red for the garden here with this particular variety that this, as you can see, this has many nodes, like, in the shorter amount of stem. Do you know what I mean? So I don't have to go too long either here. But normally 1 ha'ilima, I think that's like 12 inches, perhaps 10 to 12 inches. Another thing that you can break it off too. You don't have to use scissors. I'm just trying to be, clean. Okay, put that on the side. And then when we plant, you want to plant a lot. You want a lot of the stem, the cutting in the soil. Right? You don't want any of this, you don't want that much sticking out of the soil. Where I work is super dry. That'll dry out before it gets a chance to root. So we make a mound. I don't know if you can see, I just mounded it up in the middle there. We either do a row mounded up, or we do a series of mounds about, I don't have my shovel here, the length of my shovel. We use whatever we have out there to measure. We're not trying to be any, terribly technical. Once you make the mound, you just flatten it. Oh, it's holding some moisture here, very nice. Thank you, Katrina, for this soil. Normally I do 4 where I work, so I'm thinking one of them will take out of the 4 cuttings. And again, that's because I'm rain-fed and unirrigated. If you have access to water, you can water your plants. 2 is plenty, in a planting. And again, I'm going to go as deep as I can so that not too much of the cutting is sticking out. And I know you guys all know it's really important to have some good energy while you're doing this. If you're grumpy, it's not a good time to plant. Don't go take it out on your yard, all right? Get yourself centered. They hear us and they feel us, And so I'm imagining in my mind some vibrant red sweet potato stems and kind of a smoky leaf to contrast with this green over here. And I'm hoping that, or I'm putting in here, you're going to be strong, you're going to be vibrant, and you're going to develop a resilience out here conducive to this place where you're going to have the perfect amount of sun. That's really important too, you guys. You got to know where your sun is and where the light is in your, wherever it is you're planting. Sweet potato prefers a drier conditions, more sunlight, and then also some soil, not clay soil. Okay, and then a little bit of water. So we say in Hawaiian, "Iola oi, iola mako ne." You have life, therefore we have life, and we treat all of our plants like kupuna. So you can see I'm not going to drown my plant, right? Oh, great soil. Where's Katrina? This is fantastic. See how it's absorbing it? It's not all hydrophobic. Is that the word? Is that the right word, you guys? Hydrophobic? Yeah. Okay.
You can thank HIP Agriculture Farm Team.
Oh, fabulous. You guys are always doing excellent work. I love it. Okay, and that's it. Give a little water. Okay, so yeah. This time of the day is not the ideal time to be planting. It's a little bit, the sun is a little bit high. But because we're just planting, we need to get them some water. We also plant by the moon. And this is not the ideal moon. It's setting. So the next moon that will be rising tomorrow morning is great. This one isn't the most ideal, but again, good intention. Have a good disposition. Be present. Like, you shouldn't be thinking about what you got to do when you're doing this. Yeah, we place a lot of emphasis on having a good disposition while planting. I think that's the basics.
Got a question.
Yes.
Do they prefer more full sun or dappled sun?
Full. Yes, lots of sun. That's why it did well on the leeward side of the island. Yeah, go ahead.
So I saw you pretty much put in vertical way. I've seen a lot of YouTube going on an angle or lay down horizontally. Is there any benefit of one or another?
For me, where we work, again, it's super dry and I need to keep it covered with the soil. When I do it horizontally, so we do mounds again. And if I do it horizontally, it's not covered fully in the soil. It's a like the side of the slopes of the mounds will just kind of blow away in the winds that we're at, or having terribly heavy rains and wash away. So vertical works best for us.
Or you will get more yield if you do on an angle or flat?
It depends on, I cannot answer that. You got to go experiment.
Okay, all right.
Oh, good question.
I had the same question, but it's funny because I learned it from my grandma who grew up in Molokai in dry conditions, but where they live, they got more rain.
Yeah.
Where I live, I get
Little
70
bit.
to 110 per year.
Oh, that's ideal. Yeah.
So we do it the long way.
Yeah.
And just like everything, just like how you did, I make mine a little bit longer, put it down, and leave just a leaf at the end.
Yeah.
Cover everything up, but it's not sparse. I mean, I bury those sometimes.
Yeah. That's the secret for us
And then the
in the
rain
dry
comes
side.
in and, chickens come and scratch up the dirt and I get all kinds of junk. So
Awesome.
you go. So I guess rain, might make a difference.
Yeah,
I
so
figured you had a trial and error thing.
Oh, we have plenty trial and error. So when Dash introduced me as expert and then the email said master, I'm over there like hiding. I want to go dive into this mound right now. No, not at all. I'm just beginning to understand what works best in that area, as I believe all of you are doing too. Great information. Oh my God, Brad's information about the trees kind of applies to many plants, but just terrific stuff. Any more questions?
I got a question.
I can go on forever, you guys.
So you mentioned if you plant the root, you're going to get more leaf growth. Is this stuff planted by the bulb, or was this stuff planted the way you
That was probably planted by slips, and it's more mature, and that's what it's going to look like. So it's Katrina reminded me to mention that. So this is a mature plant, and this is your just planted plant. Yes, and so what we do with these, this is very ornamental here. It's very pretty, But if that were a mound, this particular variety will grow across the street if you don't take care of it. So we call it really, to just wind it around each other. So if it's on a mound, I would get all those vines from the outside and just flip it back onto the original planting. So that when it does, when the vines do touch the soil, it'll stay within that mound area. So I don't have to go across the street and harvest.
Theoretically, if there's 4 nodes in the ground for each slip, that means you'll have 4 potatoes?
I never counted that. Because it depends on the variety. Some varieties, like this, that particular one back here, will go across the street. But I planted some varieties, and the Uala will stay right here. It's actually the huamoa, which translates to chicken egg, and it grows like a nest, and the outside feels like eggs. It doesn't travel anywhere. So I don't know how many you would get. We do mounds so that it's easier for the rootlets to mature in that area and not bump against rocks. How many of you guys have had crooked sweet potatoes, like a little bend, 90-degree angle bend? Yeah, it probably bumped into something, on the way it matured.
What are the signs that it's ready to harvest?
Okay, so the signs, number 1 is mark your calendar when you planted it, and then check 4 months later. And checking means just removing the soil around your sweet potato plant. And if the potato is, a little bit, like here's my hand. So if it's just within the middle part of my hand, I'm going to let it stay a little bit. And mature looks like the length of my hand at least. and you can smell it. The soil and the uala will smell like sweet potato, and that's another that we use to say that it's or know that it's ready.
So when the leaves are to flourishing, if we eliminate some leaf, that'll help to promote the roots, the potato to grow better?
I never had that problem. So I don't know what's happening when I harvest the leaves, because you guys know you can eat the leaves.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's just like spinach. So it cooks quickly like spinach. You stir fry in soup or with a little bit of vegetable and protein if you want. So I don't know what's happening to the, I don't like make it all fall ahead, like it's not all gone when I take the leaves off and I'm harvesting to eat. So I don't know what's happening with the tubers in there. I imagine I'm, allowing more energy to go back into the tuber when there's less vine growth, but I've never like how Brad was explaining, trimming back the trees. I haven't done that to a Uala plant.
Second question, sorry,
Yeah.
real quick. Now
That's
start
your
to see the fifth question. So you start to see the beautiful violet color flower. Does it have any meaning to the stage of the growth?
Yeah, for us again on the leeward side, when it starts to flower, it's pow. Yeah, it's like the Uala will taste a little bit perfumey. I don't know another description, but it tastes perfumey when it's like that. It also becomes more vulnerable in our place on the leeward side. So we're not looking forward to, when I have flowers, I'm like, oh shoot, I need to hurry up and get them out of the ground.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Another way to test to see if the Uala is ready is it naturally pushes up to the surface. So you just have to kind of like dust the soil. It's already there. It's usually ready. Yeah.
I've had a couple different purple types here on the island. The one is like ordinarily sweet. You know the name of the sweetest purple.
No, I don't. There are over 200 varieties of Uala. I'm sorry, I should say 200 names for Uala, different Uala, right? Because us guys right here, we could be planting a sweet potato at our separate places, but we would each have our own name for that potato. So there might be some duplication in the type of potato, but then holding two different names. But there are 200 names of sweet potatoes. This particular variety that I planted here is, I don't know for sure, but it looks like it has the characteristics of a variety called Kane Ohe Ula, and it's got a very lobed leaf, and it's all red and smoky green with the leaves and stuff. But that will be a magenta colored Uala. Great for like making a mashed kind of a potato recipe. Not so great for a potato salad where you want the potato to hold its shape. Terrific smoked. Had it in the Imu also. The traditional way of cooking Uala was over a fire, and not a very big fire either. You just have a little fire and you're roasting your Uala, and then any more questions? Oh, okay, I got one over here, one over here. Go ahead. All right.
So this is a little bit esoteric, and I'm assuming you're serious. Did you within the monthly cycle of the moon that there are times in that, or did you mean during the year that certain moons are better?
So she's asking me to clarify the moon timetable that we use for planting. No, it's the regular cycle. The 30, it's actually technically 29.5 nights in our cycle, and we round it up to 30. We have 30 moon night names. And each night is great for certain kinds of fishing, certain types of planting. Like last night was not a good night to be outside. Too late now if you were. But every night is good for some things and not great for others.
And so which, you said tomorrow is a good night?
Lono. Mahina lono or po lono is a good time. Still a time to be very important for us to manage ourselves, if you will. Yeah, it's a sacred night.
When you started, I think you had a real long stem, and you said that's what you normally plant, but you cut it small because the bed is small, is that right?
Yes.
So how would you plant a long stem? You're not putting that long stem.
I am. Yeah, it's like, well, for me, so I'm only as high as I am, but between my elbow and wrist, or elbow and fingertip, depending on the variety and how many nodes are in there, the whole thing will go into the mound. And normally where we plant, again, we're relying on rain only. So I'll have 4 cuttings, 16 cuttings in one mound. 4 groups of 4 in a mound.
How big is your mound then?
I don't know how long a sharpshooter shovel is. Under 4 foot, I think right under 4 foot, 4 foot in like a square.
So if you did it that way, that would be that way, or a long mounded furrow.
Yes.
Like you're saying, which is kind of what this is.
Yes.
Yeah. Question number 2. You delay between cutting the stem and planting, or do you just cut and plant?
Cut and plant.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to secure that energy. If I happen to, like somebody wants cuttings for a different planting somewhere else or something like that, I will go ahead and cut the slips a little bit longer than what I want them, what they're going to be planted for, just to preserve them in water in a long vase, and just keep them until the moon is good or until the planting area is ready. How many of you have done that? Just put a cutting in a bowl or glass.
Wet paper towel.
Wet paper towel.
Because
Yeah.
it dried, yeah.
Yeah. Just keep the moisture in there. Keep things flowing. What happens if you leave it in the water too long? You'll get like a bald series of roots, and then it's kind of junky to plant at that time. So that's why we keep it long and just cut it off. Yeah, that root system, and then but hurry up and get that in the ground. It gets weaker and weaker.
So when you dig up the ground, you have to dig it up deeper than that length of the stem?
No, not necessarily. A little bit, like I don't go more than 6 inches down. Otherwise, I'm going to have to dig to China for my uala, my sweet potato tubers. You know, so
just the ground on the side.
Yes, yeah. We just kind of mound it up. Yep, just go around in a circle, mound it up. It's a square, and then it ends up with being a round mound. Yeah.
Can we grow all year round here in this area?
Yes, whatever is specific to your area, whatever your area looks like. Wintertime, less sunlight, less energy, so longer for maturity. Summertime, a little bit quicker because you're getting more sunlight for energy. Yeah. Yes.
So after you harvest, you mentioned you have to clean all the tubers out to get a new round in.
Oh yes, yeah.
And then can you replant in the same area, or do you want to rotate new things in, or?
I can where I work in one area, where the nutrients, and that's what that area is known for, is the nutrients, the density of nutrients in one area. And I do have a mala or garden area in that, what we call the sweet spot, and I can do that there. But I do still try to remove as much of the stuff as possible. The same day, I will harvest and plant in there. We can do that. Okay. But it depends how much rain I'm getting and how much sunlight and stuff like that. Otherwise, we are experimenting with rotating crops through there. So we do that, what is it, leaf, fruit, root, and then legume, right? Yeah, we do that. I think that's just generic, you guys. It's nothing I came up with, right? You can go look that up.
I've never heard it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yes.
I'm wondering if you can eat the leaves raw.
Yes, you can eat it raw too. So the thing about eating the leaves raw is when you break a stem and you notice the milk that comes out, if you eat those leaves raw, even cooking them, they're a little slimy. But if you break the stem or the leaf off and there's not too much milk coming out, like all of a sudden, it comes out with a delay or something, that's a better one to eat raw. As far as that flavor, not getting that slimy.
And if you like that.
Carry on. Yeah.
And also the Hawaiian moon calendars I got mine at Kehaulani.
Yes, they're available everywhere. Just make sure it's Hawaii Island specific. A lot of the calendars are Oahu centric, and so you may be off a couple days. So the more you learn about the moon, and then so you can use your calendar as a guide, but then go outside and check.
You know there was a time difference between your moon?
I didn't.
Yeah, a couple hours, and then if you're crossing the midnight, then it's a day, right? Yeah.
So do you know? I've noticed that on my calendar it will often have like it had June 14th on two of the moons.
Yes.
That's not a mistake.
That's not a mistake.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because the moon will rise one way and then it may set another. Yeah, so it ends up being 2 moons on that day on that Gregorian calendar. Yeah, that Gregorian calendar jams us up a little bit.
I just wanted to make a comment on, like the purple sweet potatoes. And that's a lot is now for commercial yet, but I've just learned from USDA. I was wondering why the potato sometimes is white inside and not fully purple, and the cause of that is because of
nematode. See, what the nematode does is when it attacks the sweet potato, that sweet potato puts out enzymes to fight that nematode. So when it does put that out, it uses a lot of the good nutrients, the purpleness inside. So sometimes when you eat a sweet potato and it's not really sweet, and it has not really bitter, but it has a not really sweet, that's caused by nematode.
Yeah, okay, I can go over pests real briefly. Uala is our #1 pest, or put up a fence. Make sure there's no gaps in it. Second one are turkeys and pheasants. They know exactly when it's time to harvest. They harvest your potatoes before you do. And then we do have that sweet potato weevil. So just like Brad had mentioned, when we keep our plants healthy and vibrant, then they're not vulnerable. So it's just like our bodies too. When we're healthy and vibrant, we're not vulnerable to illness and things like that. So the sweet potato is the same way. And the way to keep it vibrant for us, because we don't use anything. We don't use amendments, we don't use fertilizer. It's totally just us, the aina, and a lot of pule or good intentions and prayer going in. Yeah, you know, what we do is we watch it. As soon as any part is showing a sign of weakness, it's out of the ground. We take it out and let the aina rest. Yeah. So, yes.
You mentioned before we started about getting the sweet potato sweeter after you harvest it. Can you go over that again?
Sure. Someone asked about what's the sweetest sweet potato and whatnot, and I'm not sure, but I know how to get a potato sweeter. So when you first harvest your sweet potato, it's important to let it rest and let the sugar go back into the sweet potato. If you cook it right after you harvest it, it will be flavorless. So I wait at least one anahulu, that's 10 days, according to our moon calendar. And the idea is not to scrub it also, it's just give it a rinse, get most of the soil off of it, and put it in a crate so they're not touching each other as much as possible so that the air can breathe. If it is in a crate where it's touching one another, then go out there on a regular basis and rotate them so they can breathe a little bit. Dark, cool area is great. You can put it in the sun for a little bit right when you harvest, but hurry up and get it out of the sun. Otherwise that moisture will be pulled out too, but the sun will help with the sweetening of it. Okay, so for recipes, I think we can go to Erica. However you use the regular potatoes, how we use our sweet potato. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're there?
I think so. Any more questions?
Oh, I got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're gonna need like longer term storage options.
Oh, I'm not. There are. If you go to CITAR's website, they do have good information on how to store it for longer periods of time. It's maintaining the temperature more than anything else. Okay. Yeah.
Nice. Can we get another huge round of applause?
Thank you, you guys. Mahalo to you guys for coming all the way out here on this is Saturday, right?
Yes.
Yeah, see, on a Saturday. So yeah, mahalo to you guys. If you want to contact us, we're on the website, ulumaupuanui.org. We're on Instagram and Facebook to reach out to us any of those ways. And everyone is welcome to learn about the Kehaulani system. Mahalo.
So what I would normally do is I would probably clear the grass away from the tree. Everybody can kind of gather around a little bit so I don't have to scream too loud. Okay, so what I would normally do is I would clear the grass away a little bit further. For now, this is fine. It's just like our example planting, right? We can talk a little bit about. And the reason being is they did a study, actually, I think it came out this year, that you get like 70 times or something ridiculous more growth if the grass is cleared away from the plant that you plant in the ground than if it's not. It's something ridiculous, you know. So normally what I do is I try and get all the rhizome of the grass just cleared out around the tree, and this is, you know, it's a good start. You know, if you're really like challenged to dig a hole this big, which I mean most people would be, it's pretty hard dirt out here. You know, this is a good start, you know, but if you have time over time, then take your shovel and try and pry out the grass a little bit further away, okay?
How far of a radius?
I'd go 4 or 5 feet, and that would give you a good start on it. You know, so when you put your mulch down, the grass is pretty far away, right? And the mulch is actually going to soften the roots of anything that pops back up. So you'll be able to weed that out pretty easily as well if you miss some rhizomes. When I'm saying rhizome, it's kind of like this layer like right here, you know. So you just kind of got to get that top layer out of there, right? So with grass, you can kind of see that's as deep as those roots go right there, right? So that's kind of what you want to get out of the ground and leave it somewhere around like this stage right here. And then you won't have any more grass sprouting out around the immediate hole, okay? And what I do, usually I'm on an excavator when I'm digging holes, but what I do is I grub out the grass layer first, and then I set that on one side, and then I take my soil and I set that on the other side, okay? And I'll put if there's like 2 layers of soil, I'll put the topsoil down on one side, and then I'll put like the subgrade kind of stuff like in another pile. And that way, if I don't have to use the subgrade, if I have enough amended soil, I'll just leave that out of the hole and not use that, okay? So we got some compost down in here. Just want to mix that with the native soil that's already here. We got metal for amendments. So as I was talking about earlier, the best treatment of this kind of like scenario is just to get the hole going by putting your water in first. And you can also, at this point, you can see like how well the soil drains or not, right? So if you don't get a ton of like, the water's just pooling, you walk away an hour and you come back and there's still water in the hole, you got to add something for drainage, So you're going to have to dig a bigger puka and put some gravel and cinder in with it because you want that water to drain away. So this is actually draining pretty good. You can see the water going down right away. So this is kind of what we're looking for.
One more bucket.
Yeah, one more bucket. So at this point, we kind of want to, since everybody's waiting around, so we kind of want to build like a little mound in the middle of it, okay? So what I've done is I've just kind of like created this little mound like this, and then you have your hole coming up the sides here, okay? And what that's going to allow is just going to support the base of this once I take it out. And then you kind of want to make sure that, it's got like a firm kind of footing. So you want to kind of firm that up a little bit. What you don't want is you don't want the tree to sink after you plant it too much. It's going to sink a little bit because that soil is going to recompact, but you don't want it to sink enough to where the tree's like down in a dip like this. Because what's going to happen over time is as it rains, silt and mulch and other stuff's going to pile in there. It's going to rot the trunk of your tree, okay? And it's going to suffocate the top roots. So we don't want that to happen. Oh yeah, I've got some, this is Fab Char. This is the product that Brooks makes in town. I don't know the name of this company. You know the name of this company?
I think they're selling Fab Char under the Dragon Heart.
Yeah, Dragon Heart, that's right.
Yeah, it's available
at
the hardware store, and then
hardware store
Booth sells it on Saturday.
Yep, and they also sell it in Kona at Farm and Garden. Or you can call Brooks directly and he can come over and talk your ear off about worms and Fab Char and stuff. He's like a wealth of knowledge about all this stuff, right? So it's fish amino acid inoculated and then ran through worms. It looks like this. So it has a little bit of soil mixed in with it. I think he uses composted coconut coir from the cucumber farm. So he really like enriches the charcoal, and then he feeds it to his worms, and the worms eat through the whole pile and leave their castings. And when they digest it, they actually add enzymes. They break down anything that's going to be like too harsh or whatever else. And they like neutralize the whole product and stabilize it. And the act of running it through their gut actually helps the charcoal inoculate as well. So that's how you get this dense charcoal product, okay?
How much does he charge for a book?
It varies in price. He's got like different grades of product. So he has one that's really rich. I forget the name of it. He's got 3 or 4 different products. So you just have to ask him like what your application is going to be, and he'll kind of guide you in the right direction. He'll be like, oh, use X amount of this per hole, or if it's like a bigger project, he'll be like, oh, use this. It's really concentrated, and stuff like that. So what I do like with this Fab Char kind of stuff is I want to put like a couple healthy handfuls in there. We'll add a little bit more just 'cause it's on a dry hill. Okay. And just kind of mix it into the soil. make my mound, firm it up a little bit. Okay. And then what you want to do is just carefully cut this bag off. You don't have to like try and do anything fancy, you know, try and tip it out of this thing or whatever else. And Planted Hawaii uses this neat little thing on top so they don't have to weed anything. So we'll take that off. Okay, so on the tree, what we're gonna do is just, like I said, the soil's probably gonna fall off your tree, which is fine. We're just gonna let it fall off. Okay. Now, when I was talking about how the roots wrap in the bag, right? So these are your roots that are kind of wrapping. So we're just gonna very gently kind of tease those roots and just make sure we don't have like any hardcore like wrapping of the roots, and we don't. These are actually all in pretty decent shape. If the tree was to sit in the bag for like a good year or two, they're gonna start spiraling in that bag, right? So, and because we're adding like dry soil to this, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just add little layers, and then I'm gonna water it, right? Because you don't wanna have dry pockets, because that'll kind of kill your tree. And just as we go, just kind of like look at your root system, imagine which direction it's gonna go, and just keep encouraging those roots as you plant them. And now, at this point too, you wanna make sure like we're a little bit high on these top roots right here. So I'm actually gonna bring this tree down just a little bit. Okay. Yep, very good. Again, try and get all your little grass rhizomes out. You never know what you're gonna find, Glenn. Kohala. Found a car the other day. That was pretty interesting.
For real?
Yeah. Found a car. We were digging on someone's property and found an old car. It was first the license plate, which was kind of cool. I was like, oh, cool, license plate. And then it was like, oh, a wheel. And then it was like, oh, an engine.
Is it James?
No. We're not in Makapala. Yeah. So you can kind of crush this crumbly soil. You can kind of crush up the excess soil so you have enough. Also, too, like the orientation, you want the plant to be straight up. If you're on a hillside, don't plant it like this, you know. So kind of plant it upright, right? All things that like you think you know, and then you gotta like remind yourself sometimes, right?
Are you gonna put that soil that it came off of the roots back in?
Yeah, I'm gonna throw that on there as well. And also too, this is a good example. Like we're on a little hillside right here, right? So what we can do is we can create a little bit of a well on this downhill side. So when the rain comes and it comes down this way, it's gonna actually catch on this instead of just running off, right? So we'll leave a little bit of an indentation on this top side, and we'll just create a little well on this bottom side. And that's it. Then say a little prayer. And
Little roots that are sticking out of the top. Is that okay?
yeah, I wish we had a little bit more soil, which we're kind of light on soil here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cover these up.
And is it okay if you like mulch enough to cover stuff like that?
No, you want to put soil. Yeah, the mulch, there's gonna be just too much air in there, and it's gonna dry out too quick. Okay. So what you don't want is you want water retention, and it's a balance, right? You want a balance between water retention and air. So it's really, you know, depending on your site, you got to figure that out, right? All right, we'll probably put one more bucket of water, but that's pretty much it. Any questions? Go ahead.
Is there any benefit to removing some of the leaves? Because it'll kind of go into shock a little bit.
It will. It depends. You know, like most of my trees, I try and do plantings like in the early part of the day or the late part of the day, and that way you don't get as much shock. Planting it in the midday like this, you want to just make sure and keep it wet. So I'll water it right now, and I'll probably encourage them to come put another bucket of water on in a couple hours and just keep it moist, and then you'll be fine. I wouldn't remove any of the leaves because at this point, the photosynthesis is more important. So, but yeah, some people do that with certain plants. You'll remove leaf and stuff, and that way it doesn't shock as hard.
Mm-hmm.
There's also products you can use. We use this one called New Film, and it's almost like a wax that coats all the leaves. So when we go transplant like really big trees, we'll spray that on the whole plant before we dig it out, and that it's pretty much coating it in a wax, and it'll retain all of its moisture, during the transplant.
Wow, fascinating.
So yeah, newer kind of inventions, that they're coming up with.
So. I'm just curious, like, the soil was felt so loose. Would you compact that, not push that down anymore?
It's gonna compact, as we water it too. So that'll make a difference.
Okay.
Yeah, like I was saying, this isn't like perfect conditions. Like if I was gonna in a perfect world, I'd dig a bigger hole, grub away the grass more, and I'd probably bring in some kind of like soil, other kind of soil. We use a mix that we make out of our wood chip compost, mixed with black cinder and a type of topsoil. So I'd probably add that to amend the soil. But this actually will provide like really good drainage, and the roots are down deep enough to where this plant's not going to be, it'll be okay as long as we water it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question, Brad.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you're trimming the trees, you had mentioned earlier inside, just cut that dominant.
Right.
Do you coat it at all or anything?
No need. Yeah. I mean, with a bigger branch, you might want to coat it, but as long as you got sterile cutters, it should be okay. Yeah, the citrus are pretty resilient. And this one actually has pretty, like you can choose out of these branches here. I'd leave this leader. I'd probably leave this hardy branch right here, but I'd probably, in 6 months, I'd probably trim these out. And then I'll encourage like a branch to come out here, and maybe encourage another one to come out here and here off the top, and then you'd have your four main branches. Tangerines generally have way more branching structure than other citrus. You'll notice if you have a tangerine in your yard, it'll just be like just loaded, So it takes a lot of time to go through a tangerine tree and thin it out, but it's much needed. Go through your tangerine tree and cut back all the stuff that's like cluttering the inside of it, kind of thin out the inside, open up the crown, get any crossing branches, any that are leaning towards the center, any that are shooting straight up. And after you do that, it should be pretty open feeling. It'll be less susceptible to disease. It'll encourage better fruiting. And just be a healthier plant overall. Yeah.
Can we just take a quick group photo, like just folks on this side, and we can look this way? Is that cool? To represent, and we can go east. Most important.
What kind of boots are those?
Oh, these are made by